Once upon a time, there was a man named Tunde. He was deeply in love with a woman named Lade. When they first met, Lade was an epitome of beauty and grace. She dressed well, smelled nice, and always looked neat. Tunde was mesmerized by her charm and elegance, and it wasn't long before he proposed to her. They had a beautiful wedding, and Tunde felt like the luckiest man alive. Tunde was respected and admired by his colleagues at work. He was smart, ambitious, and hardworking with a promising future. Tunde had it all figured out. A good job, friends who admired him, and a loving wife. He had married Lade, a woman who during their courtship seemed to be everything he ever wanted. She was very beautiful, elegant, and she always looked neat. Her skin glowed, her clothes were spotless, and she always smelled of sweet perfumes. He couldn't have asked for anything better than the day they tied the knot. However, shortly after their wedding, Lade changed drastically. Lade's beautiful appearance became a mere shadow of the woman Tunde had fallen in love with. Slowly, she stopped taking care of herself. First, she would leave her clothes lying around the house, and then she started skipping showers. At first, Tunde brushed it off as her being tired, and maybe she was adjusting to the new role of a married woman. He believed it was just a phase and things would get better over time. But they didn't. In fact, things got worse. Lade's hygiene went from 100 to 0. She stopped bathing for days, sometimes a whole week. She rarely brushed her teeth, and her breath became terribly bad. The once sweet-smelling perfumes she used had long been forgotten, replaced with the stench of body odor and sweat. The house became filthy. Dishes piled up in the sink. The floor was sticky, and cockroaches began to roam freely in the house. Despite the overwhelming filth, Lade didn't seem to care. Whenever Tunde's colleague came over, they were greeted by a foul-smelling house. Lade would often embarrass him with her appearance. She would sit among his guests, wearing a house robe and hair bonnet. She smelled like she hadn't had her bath in days. Tunde could see the discomfort on his colleagues' faces, and worse, they started whispering behind his back. How can a man like Tunde live with such a woman? They would say, mocking him in the office. Tunde was embarrassed, and he tried to talk to Lade. He would say things like, "My love, don't you want to take a bath? I think you will feel better after it." Or he would say, "Babe, I got you this deodorant. It smells really nice. Maybe you can try it out." But Lade barely paid attention to him. Things got so bad that she rarely changed her sanitary pad during her monthly flow. On the rare occasion she agreed to change her sanitary pad, she would do so without taking her bath. Tunde was confused. How did she change overnight? How could the woman he loved so much become so dirty? The situation got out of hand when Lade got pregnant. Tunde was hopeful that the pregnancy would motivate her to clean up after herself, thinking that carrying a child might make her take proper care of herself and their home. Unfortunately, it only made things worse. Lade would go an entire week without bathing. And when she finally decided to step under the shower, she wouldn't use soap. She would stand under the running water for a minute or two, and that was all. She didn't bother brushing her teeth or washing her hair, and her body odor became unbearable. As the months went by, Tunde began to avoid inviting anyone over to their house. His colleagues at work no longer saw him as the tidy and well-organized man they once respected. Even his boss noticed that something was off about him. The stress of Lade's behavior weighed heavily on him. Tunde would stay at the office longer than necessary just to avoid going home to the mess and the unbearable smell. When Lade finally gave birth to a bouncing baby boy, Tunde thought maybe things would get better. But again, he was wrong. Lade remained the same, if not worse. She refused to bath the baby or even keep the house clean. The dishes would pile up for days. The laundry remained untouched, and used sanitary pads were left in the most random places. At times, under the couch, inside the wardrobe, sometimes even inside the baby's crib. Lade's mother-in-law, Mama Tunde, came to help her after she had given birth. At first, she helped her clean the house, bath the baby, and cook meals. She was very caring and understanding. She did the whole house chores, thinking Lade was overwhelmed by her new role as a mother. That was why she couldn't do anything. But it wasn't long before Mama Tunde realized that her daughter-in-law wasn't just tired, but she was utterly dirty. One day, while cleaning the living room, she bent down to pick something from under the couch, and to her disbelief, she found a used sanitary pad stuffed between the chairs. Lade, what is the meaning of this? Mama Tunde yelled, holding up the pad with disgust. Lade spoke casually as if nothing was wrong. Mama, I must have forgotten it there, she said without even a hint of shame. Mama Tunde couldn't believe her ears. Forgotten? This is disgusting. How can you live like this, this girl? What kind of a woman are you? You don't even care about your own hygiene. The argument that followed was intense, filled with harsh words and accusations. For the first time, the close bond Lade had with her mother-in-law began to crack. The two women, who were once like best friends, became distant. Tunde was torn between his wife and his mother. He knew his mother was right, but he didn't want to betray his wife. He had covered up for her bad habits for so long, he didn't know how to face the truth anymore. Things had gotten so bad that he couldn't even invite his own family over. He was ashamed she would disgrace him. Tunde would prefer they hung out in restaurants. His wife had become a disgrace in the eyes of everyone he knew. One day, Tunde was scheduled for an important presentation at work, one that could lead to a promotion and a huge pay. He was nervous but prepared. He packed his laptop and headed to the office. As he opened his bag to pull out his laptop, during the presentation, something fell out of the bag. It was a used sanitary pad, and right behind it, a cockroach ran across the table. The entire room went silent. His colleagues were horrified. His boss looked at him in disgust. Tunde wanted to crawl under the table and disappear. "Get out," his boss shouted. "This is unacceptable. How could you be so careless? You are no longer fit to work here." Tunde was fired on the spot. As he drove home in defeat, his mind was filled with a mixture of shame, anger, and sadness. He had lost everything he worked for: his job, his respect, and even his peace, all because of Lade and her unbearable dirty habit. The thought of divorce had never crossed his mind before, but this time he was ready for the worst. He loved Lade deeply, but now all he felt was frustration. How could he continue living like this? His wife's bad hygiene had cost him his job and as well ruined his reputation. When he got home that night, he confronted Lade for the last time. "Lade," he said, his voice heavy with sadness, "I lost my job today because of you. I can't live like this anymore." Lade, seated lazily on the couch with a messy bun, wearing the same clothes from 3 days ago, barely looked at him. "It's not my fault, oh," she muttered. "It is your fault," Tunde shouted, his voice breaking. "I have tried everything to help you, to love you despite all of this. You don't want to change, right? You don't even care about me. You don't even care about our child, not even our relationship. You almost killed our child with your dirty habits. You don't care about me at all, and I am tired of this marriage." Lade stared at him in silence, as if the weight of his word had finally hit her. But it was too late. Tunde had made up his mind. That night, he packed his things and left. He didn't know where he was going or what he would do next, but he knew he couldn't stay in that house any longer. As he walked away from the home he once dreamt of building with Lade, he felt a mixture of sorrow and relief. He had lost so much because of his wife's hygiene, but he finally took the first step towards reclaiming his life by leaving the house. After leaving the house, Tunde found himself driving around the streets, unsure of his next move. The weight of his decision to walk out of Lade was heavy, but he also felt an undeniable sense of freedom. He hadn't realized just how much stress and unhappiness he had been carrying until he finally stepped out of his home. As he drove, the night air felt fresh, better than the suffocating stench that had become his everyday life. Tunde called an old friend, Ojo, who had always been a dependable guy. He asked if he could stay with him for a few days. Ojo, unaware of the situation in Tunde's home, immediately agreed. Of course, bro. You know you are always welcome here, Ojo said cheerfully. When Tunde arrived at Ojo's apartment, his friend was surprised to see the worn-out expression on his face. Tunde, you don't look good at all. What is going on? Trouble at work? Tunde sighed heavily and sat down on the couch, burying his face on his hands. Bro, it is worse than that. It is Lade. My life has become a mess because of her. Over the next hour, Tunde poured out everything that has been bottled up inside of him for months. He told Ojo about Lade's bad hygiene, the stench in his home, how it had cost him his job, and how he couldn't take it anymore. Ojo listened in shock, shaking his head as Tunde narrated. Ah, Tunde, how did it get this bad? Ojo asked, genuinely concerned. Why didn't you tell me earlier? I thought things would get better and maybe she would change, Tunde admitted. But it only got worse, and I kept making excuses for her. I didn't want to give up on my marriage so soon, but now I don't even know what else to do. Ojo was quiet for a moment before speaking up. My guy, you did what you could do. You already lost your job and it is affecting you badly. You need time away from home, possibly to breathe and to rethink everything over again. Tunde nodded, but he still felt a deep sense of failure. He never thought he would be the kind of man to leave his wife. In his family, marriage was sacred and divorce was seen as an ultimate failure. Yet, here he was, contemplating the very thing he had vowed never to do. Days had turned into weeks and Tunde found himself settling into Ojo's apartment. But he knew he couldn't stay there forever. Ojo, being a good friend, didn't push him. But it was clear that Tunde needed to make some decisions about his future. During this time, he had no contact with Lade. She hadn't called, texted, or even tried to reach out to him. It was as if she didn't care. One day, while sitting on the couch, Tunde received a call from his mother. He had avoided telling her about the situation with Lade, but words had traveled fast in their town. And it wasn't long before his mother heard about him losing his job and walking out of his marriage. Tunde, his mother began, her voice stern but full of concern. What is this I am hearing about you leaving your wife and your job? What happened, my son? Tunde sighed deeply, unsure of how to explain everything to his mother, but he knew he couldn't hide the truth any longer. Mama, it is a long story. Lade is not the woman I thought she was. His mother listened carefully as Tunde explained everything, from the disgusting state of their home to Lade's refusal to take care of herself. He told her about the sanitary pad he found inside his briefcase and how it has led to him being fired from his place of work. Tunde, my son, his mother said after a long pause. This is serious, so I know marriage is not easy, but this is not normal. Have you tried talking to her family about it? No, Mama. I didn't want to disgrace her. I kept hoping she would change, but I guess I hoped wrongly. My dear, you have done your best, but you cannot continue to suffer like this. It is affecting your whole life and even your career. You should involve her parents. They need to know what is going on in their daughter's life. After the conversation with his mother, Tunde realized that he could no longer avoid facing Lade's family. They needed to know the truth. He was ready to do anything, even though it was going to embarrass her. Maybe they could help him reach out to her and talk some senses into her, or at least understand why she changed overnight after their wedding. The next weekend, Tunde made a decision to visit Lade's parents. It wasn't an easy decision, but he felt that involving them was the only option he had left. When he arrived at Lade's family house, he was greeted warmly by her mother, who had no idea of what was going on. Tunde, it has been a long while. My dear, how is Lade and how is my baby? Her mother asked, smiling brightly. Tunde hesitated before answering, Mama, things are not okay, and that is why I am here. Her smile faded and concern took over her face. What do you mean? Tunde, what is wrong? Tunde explained everything to Lade's mother, just as he had with Ojo and his mother. He could see the shock and disbelief in her face as he described her daughter's behavior. Lade's mother was silent for a long time, processing what Tunde had said. With a deep sigh, she spoke up. My son, I don't even know what to say. I am shocked myself at what you have just said. To be honest, I don't know where she learned that behavior from. Growing up, she wasn't like this. She used to be well put together. What happened to her? Mama, I really don't know. Tunde said, his frustration showing, but she has been like this since we got married. Mama, it gets worse by the day. Lade's mother just couldn't believe her ears. Please, my son, I will speak to her. But please don't make any rash decision yet. I am certain something is not right. Tunde nodded, though he wasn't hopeful. He had tried everything and nothing had worked, but he agreed to let her mother intervene. A few days later, Lade's mother went to visit her daughter. When she arrived at the house, she was horrified by what she saw. The once neat and beautiful home she had visited before their wedding was now in a chaotic mess. Dirty dishes were everywhere, laundry was piled up, and there was a foul smell in the air. Lade was seated on the couch. She looked like she hadn't showered in days. Her hair was in a bonnet, and she was wearing a night robe. Lade, what is the meaning of this? Her mother exclaimed, unable to hide her disgust. Lade looked up lazily. What do you mean, Mama? So your husband was right after all. Are pigs living in this house? And you look like you haven't had your bath in days. What is going on here, Lade? Lade rolled her eyes. Mama, it is not that bad. I have just been tired. Tired doesn't explain this level of filth. Her mother shouted. Do you know that Tunde came over to the house? Lade, because of you, Tunde lost his job and you seem unbothered. Lade sat up, looking irritated. Mama, it's not my fault Tunde lost his job. He's just being a drama king. Drama? Her mother echoed, her voice rising in anger. You are ruining your life and your marriage, and you don't even seem to care. Tunde had threatened to divorce you if you don't sit up and clean up your mess. Lade, you need to get help. For the first time, Lade looked unsettled. Help? What do you mean, Mama? This is not normal. You are a wife and a mother now. You can't keep living like this. Mama, you blame me for everything. When Tunde is the genesis of his problem, Lade said without holding back. Is there something you are not telling me? You better start talking now because I am so disappointed in you. Mama, before we got married, I told my husband that we will be needing a house help at home because of my 9-to-5 job. Mama, I watched how you abandoned your career and took care of everyone at home, and in the process, you lost yourself. Papa started sleeping around, and when you confronted him, he said you were no longer attractive and you were too old for him, all because you enslaved yourself for the family. Mama, at first, Tunde agreed to get me a house help. He promised to support my career, but immediately we got married, Tunde changed. He said he wanted me to be a full-time housewife. Tunde said he didn't want any house help in his house because they were of no good. Mama, I tried to convince him, but he shunned me. I was pained and hopeless because I was already married to him. So I decided to take my revenge on him by frustrating him. I wanted my husband to feel the exact pain I felt when he took my career away from me and forced me to become a housewife. Tunde is a selfish man. Mama, I didn't go to school all these years only to end up as a housewife. I don't regret my action at all. Ah, Lade, you have finished me. Things like this should be handled maturely. After a long silence, her mother sighed heavily. I am going to talk to your father. We will figure out what to do next. But you need to decide if you want to save your marriage. Tunde is a good man, and you too can decide what is best for your home. That evening, Lade's parents held a family meeting to discuss the situation. They were deeply concerned about their daughter's behavior and the impact it was having on her marriage. Lade's father was a strict man. When he was younger, he didn't understand the importance of family values. But as the years passed by, he believed in maintaining good family values. He was disturbed by the news of Lade's bad hygiene and how it may cost her losing her home. Dear, we must do something about this, he said. I deeply understand Lade's point, but things like this shouldn't be handled immaturely. Tunde too is a patient man, but he has his limits. Our daughter and her husband needs help. The next day, Lade's parents sat her down for a serious conversation. They urged her to seek counseling and take steps to improve her hygiene and household management. Lade's father specifically told her to learn better ways to communicate with her husband rather than taking revenge on every provocation. Lade felt concerned. She agreed to attend counseling sections because it was now beyond her control. In the bid to punish her husband, she had gotten used to this lifestyle. Weeks had passed and Lade attended counseling regularly. The sessions were easy because the habit hadn't gone that deep. She was more concerned in getting her home back. She wanted her husband Tunde to come back home as well. On a good evening, she reached out to her mother-in-law, who told her she was highly disappointed in her. Inasmuch as Lade didn't want to justify her actions, she opened up to her husband's mother. She told her the reason she acted the way she did. Although Mama Tunde wasn't happy, she took that decision because she believed there are other ways to handle a difficult husband. She was also disappointed in her son Tunde. She agreed to give Tunde's new address to Lade and also his friend's number, just in case Tunde refused to pick up his calls. The next day, Lade tried reaching her husband, but he didn't take her calls. The next morning, she called again, yet he didn't pick up and he never returned her calls. She went to the drawer where she had dropped the paper she wrote Ojo's number, Tunde's friend. She dialed the number and in no time, Ojo picked. She greeted him warmly and introduced herself as Lade, Tunde's wife. She told him if he could give the phone to her husband since he wasn't picking up his phone. When Ojo went over to hand over the phone to Tunde, he told him he wasn't interested in talking to Lade. Ojo was quite disappointed in his friend but he understood his pain. He spoke with Lade for a long time, and that was where she told him her own side of the story. Ojo was sure that Lade had changed, and so he promised her he would speak to Tunde on her behalf. Ojo was true to his word. He knew Tunde contributed to the problem in his home, but he wasn't ready to admit to his own fault. Tunde had gotten comfortable living with Ojo. He wasn't sure if he wanted to go back to his home. He loved his wife, but the thought of returning to the filth and chaos was too much to bear. For the first time in weeks, Ojo sat Tunde down. Ojo wasn't sure on how to start the conversation, but he knew someone had to say something anyways. Bro, I have been thinking. You said Lade used to be very neat, but immediately you two got married, she changed, right? Ojo asked. Have you ever thought if maybe you contributed to the problem? Bro, what are you talking about? Tunde immediately asked. I know there is no justification to your wife's behavior. She really messed up big time. Trust me. You are a good man as well. But can I be honest with you? Ojo asked. My man, please go ahead. Tunde responded, his ears eager to hear what Ojo had to say. Our people say there is no smoke without fire. Your wife and I just spoke, and I can feel the sincerity in her voice. She told me you stopped her from working. Immediately you two got married. Bro, in all honesty, if you wanted a stay-at-home wife, you would have told her before the marriage. She told me you had agreed to get her a help to assist her with the house chores too. But after the marriage, you stopped her from working. You told her she can't get a help due to reason best known to you. And out of frustration, she decided to return the favor that resulted to her dirty habits. At this point, Tunde couldn't believe his ears. He was impatient and very angry, so he cut Ojo halfway. What are you even saying, bro? Are you trying to say I don't have rights over my wife? All I wanted was the best for my wife. I didn't want her to go through the stress of working. I gave her everything she wanted. Before he could finish his words, his friend Ojo cut him short. Bro, did you ever ask her what she wanted? Or you just assumed she wanted to be a housewife? In all honesty, I will advise you to drop your ego and go fix your home. Your wife has gone for therapy and she is a work in progress. I advise you visit the therapist and work on your mindset. This is the 21st century and women too are allowed to work. Tunde had returned back to his room, still trying to understand what Ojo had just said. He realized his ego had destroyed his home. He knew he wouldn't blame Lade forever, so he decided to man up. After a few days in Ojo's house, he picked up his bags and left for his home. He was ready to face his fears. On getting to his home, the same one he had shared with Lade, he couldn't believe his eyes. The house that smelled of unwashed plates and clothes was now replaced with a sweet fragrance. He knew he hadn't called Lade before returning home. Was she trying to impress him? He thought. Meanwhile, Lade was busy preparing lunch in the kitchen. He walked in and a beautiful aroma met him. He didn't want to jump into conclusion, so he concluded within him to watch her from a distance. On seeing her husband, Lade immediately went on her knees. She confessed that her neglect of herself and the household had its roots in deeper issues. She pleaded and asked her husband to forgive her. Tunde was still deeply in love with her. He wasn't ready to allow his ego to destroy the beautiful home he had always wanted to build with Lade. He remembered the humiliation he had endured from his friends and colleagues, losing his job, and the stench he returned home to meet every day after a hectic day at work. Deep down, he hoped that the woman he had fallen in love with was back. Tunde knew he wasn't a saint after all. He also asked his wife to forgive him, promising her to involve her in whatever decision he takes for the family. Finally, after weeks of observing his wife, he knew she had genuinely changed for the best. Their home was full of sweetness and Lade got the help she needed. As Tunde hired the services of an elderly woman to assist his wife while she thrived in her career, Tunde found a new job and it didn't take time. He regained his confidence and respect. In the end, Tunde realized that love wasn't just about himself and the good moments. It was about choosing to work things out together, even when things were at their worst. And though their journey had been far from perfect, they had become stronger, with a deeper understanding of each other and a commitment to never letting things fall apart again. Dear viewers, the story of Tunde and Lade is a reminder that marriage is between a man and a woman, and the decision made must be favorable to both parties. For those who are in courtship, please talk about everything if possible. Dear viewers, what are your thoughts about Lade's actions? Do you think she would have handled things better? Or did she do the right thing by taking revenge on her husband? Kindly share your thoughts with us in the comment section. Thank you for watching, family. If you are a returning subscriber, here is a hug from me to you. And if you are new here, you are welcome to the family. Thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel until we bring another story your way next time. Bye.